What's up, guys? Josh Pate here from 24/7 Sports, joined as always by National Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. It's time for the weekly Wiltfong Recruiting Whip Around. Steve, we got a lot to talk about. We've got commitments that have already happened, but let's talk about what's in the near future. Malike Mataveo, we've got a commitment on deck. What's the latest?
Look, my 24/7 Sports crystal ball for Malike Mataveo is at a 10 on a 10 scale with the new 24/7 Sports crystal ball feature, which has him as a lock to Oregon. I put that forecast in as a lock on Tuesday morning after talking to a source with knowledge of the recruitment. He's announcing Wednesday night at 9 p.m. So today at 9 p.m. evening as we record this. Oregon starts the day, Josh, with the number 20 recruiting class in the 24/7 Sports Composite. That's number 2 in the Pac-12, but you know I'm more fond of looking at that average ranking per commit category, which tells you how talented the class really is. And the Ducks sit at number 5 going into this announcement. That's tops in the Pac-12. To kind of put in perspective why I like to look at average ranking per commit, especially this time of year. Oregon has just 8 commits right now. Mataveo would be number 9. LSU has the least amount of commits in the top 10 at 12. Ohio State's got 18 commits. Tennessee has 24. Florida and Michigan have 17, just to give some perspective there. If the Ducks do land Mataveo, the number 4 tight end in the 24/7 Sports Composite, they'll rise 6 spots to number 14 overall. The 6'6", 235-pound Mataveo, he turned 47 receptions in the 730 yards and 7 touchdowns as a junior. He is one of the most coveted players in the country at his position by programs coast to coast. He lines up flexed in the slot, attached for Henderson, Nevada, Liberty High. He can stretch the field. He's physical after the catch. We see him make the tough grab on film, and he's certainly a plus target in the red zone. Tight end is a major need for Coach Mario Cristobal and his staff this cycle. Mataveo, Oregon wants 2 tight ends in this class. Mataveo would be a huge coup and another piece to the program as they try and take this team that won the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl last year and go into the college football playoff and beyond. Moving forward, they're also swinging at the number 2 tight end in the 24/7 Sports rankings, Brock Bowers. They're battling Georgia, Penn State, Cal, and Notre Dame for him. I like Georgia for Brock Bowers, but Oregon's in the middle of that one. I like the way it's kind of setting up for this tight end in the state of Colorado, Terrence Ferguson, Josh. He has Oregon in his top 5 with Auburn, who's trending for Landon King out of the state of Texas. USC, who's trending for Lake McCree out of the state of Texas. Tennessee, who has several tight end types committed in their class. And Wisconsin, who just landed top 247 tight end Jack Pugh over the weekend. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon landed both Mataveo and Ferguson when all said and done at the position, and Mario and Cristobal and company are continue to pick up steam with this 2021 class that I think is especially kind of loaded on offense. When you talk about the quarterback, Ty Thompson, and they're going to bring in one of the premier offensive line classes this cycle, and they're in the thick of it for some big-time receivers like Cristobal, Dante Thornton, a top 247 pass catcher, consensus top 100 recruit to Oregon over the weekend, and Troy Franklin, who dropped his leaderboard on Tuesday. I like the way that's where Oregon sits in that group right now.
Let's circle back to Troy Franklin there, the 4-star receiver out of California. Steve, you mentioned that name, and we've got a revised list from him. What does that look like?
I know there's some schools, Josh, I think Troy Franklin's the number 1 receiver prospect in the country. We have Emeka Egbuka, who's also out west in Washington State, ranked number 1, but Troy Franklin, with his ability to stretch the field and run, is extremely high on a lot of programs' boards. He's the number 2 receiver in the 24/7 Sports Composite, number 31 player overall. He dropped his top 4 over the weekend. Brandon Huffman had a great interview with him on those schools, but the finalists are Alabama, Arizona State, Oregon, and Washington. I give Oregon the slight edge in this group. He had another strong visit there in the spring. I think Washington is also near the top of the list. Junior Adams leading the charge for the Huskies there. And obviously is a relationship playing 7-on-7 with Washington's quarterback commit, Sam Heward. Arizona State seems to be in the middle of all these blue chip battles out west. And Troy Franklin, talking to to him for over a year now. He's always had a keen eye on the SEC. Alabama is going to sign one of the top receiver classes in the country this year. They already have two of Florida's best committed in Aggie Hall and Ja'Cory Brooks. Troy Franklin's a top target for Nick Saban and company, so we'll see if the Tide can make a move. But I like where Oregon's positioned at this point in the cycle.
Let's go a long way, Steve, all the way across the country down to Miami, Florida. I'm looking right now at these 5 stars in front of me, and Leonard Taylor's name pops off the screen. What's the latest with Mr. Taylor?
And we're especially high on Leonard Taylor at 24/7 Sports. He's our number 1 ranked defensive tackle, number 4 player overall in the top 247 player rankings. He did a little bit of shuffling with his top 5 in the programs that are in the mix now. Florida remains the perceived favorite, the 24/7 Sports crystal ball favorite. They're in there. LSU and Coach Orgeron and his staff pushing hard for him. They make the top 5. Tennessee, I think they're kind of the dark horse sleeper. Like, I kind of like where the balls are at for Leonard Taylor right now with Brian Niedermeyer, Jimmy Brumbaugh, and of course, Coach Pruitt and company pushing for him. Auburn's in the top 5. Rodney Garner pointing to this recent NFL draft with Derek Brown going in the first round, Marlon Davidson going in the second round, and then the local Hurricanes in there, rounding out the top 5 with defensive coordinator Abraham Banda pushing and leading the charge there for the Hurricanes.
Let's head down to Louisiana, Steve. Really good size here. 6'4", 185, the 4-star wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. out of Louisiana. We got a list to talk about with him, too.
Yeah, 6'4", 185-pound pass catcher out of the state of Louisiana. Like you said, he's the number 2 receiver in the top 247. He's number 41 overall. Charles Power, our national analyst, compares his game to Michael Thomas to give you some perspective of the kind of player Brian Thomas Jr. is, comparing him to maybe the best receiver in the NFL. But Brian Thomas, there was a lot of buzz early on that Alabama was the team to beat, and they're one of the finalists for him, of course, as is LSU. It's a special year at receiver in Florida. It's a special year at receiver in Louisiana. And LSU and Alabama battling for the likes of Brian Thomas and Chris Hilton. Georgia's in the thick of this battle, and Texas A&M rounding out the top 4 for Brian Thomas.
Out in Texas, Steve, a couple of offensive line prospects who happen to share the same last name, Tommy and James Brockermeyer. I know you've been in touch with this family, and James Brockermeyer in particular, very recently. Is this one of those true brother package deal, you get me, you get him sort of situations?
Well, they're twins, and I think that they would like to play together in college. But they're. I asked James that yesterday just to be sure, and he said most likely that they would play together in college, but they're not gonna. They're making their own decisions, and so if Tommy likes one school a little bit more than he said he likes another school, they would go their separate ways. But I would imagine they're both going to end up at the same school. James dropped his Final Four, which was Alabama, Auburn, LSU, in Texas. So many family ties to the University of Texas. Their dad was a great player at Texas before a long career in the NFL, Blake. They have a brother on the roster at Texas now. Their grandfather played for the Longhorns. And Josh, if Texas just had more success in developing offensive linemen and putting them into the league as of late, I think they've only had one offensive lineman drafted in the last 11 years, I believe. Now, I know they're tracking for someone to be picked high in this upcoming draft, and I'm sure Texas is pointing to that, but Alabama's pointing to year after year after year after year they're having offensive linemen being drafted high. And I think that's appealing to James and Tommy Brockermeyer. And so I think all things even, they'll go to Texas. But talking to the family and talking to them, I get the sense that Alabama is in a great spot right now, and we'll see how the process continues. They want to make a decision before senior season, or at least that's what James said his timetable was yesterday. I don't envision that being soon. I tend to take that as more late July, early August for a decision. They'd like to get back out on the road and take officials. And Alabama was slated to get 2 officials because with the family, you can take your family on these officials. So they were going to go to Alabama for Tommy official, go to Alabama for a James official. And then they were going to get back to LSU and Auburn and Texas for officials as well. And they had planned to go to a couple spring practices at Texas to watch that. So we'll see how this one unfolds for the Brockermeyers moving forward. LSU Coach Orgeron are turning it up there. They won the Joe Moore Award for Best Offensive Line. James pointed to the guys being drafted out of there. And then they went to the Iron Bowl last year, and they said that was the best college football atmosphere that they've been in ever in watching the Tigers beat the Tide last season.
Steve, we have not been able to so much as blink as of late, or else we've missed several commitments happen. It's been unprecedented. We're in unprecedented times now, and we got so many guys committed, and that hasn't changed over the last 72, 96 hours, whatever the case may be. What's caught your eye the most?
Josh, let's start with the Pittsburgh Panthers, man. Pat Narduzzi and his staff are tracking for one of the top backfields in college football. In the 2020 class, they landed Israel Abanikanda, the number 1 player in New York, the number 14 running back in the top 247, number 160 overall. He's got 10.69 speed in the 100-meter dash, and used those wheels to average 10 yards a carry in scoring 20 touchdowns as a senior for Brooklyn Lincoln, and he's already making a huge impact at Pitt. He's going to start making a name for himself this fall. And then Tuesday, they go out and land Malik Newton out of Norfolk Lake Taylor in Virginia, who helped his program, led his team to a state championship, a two-way standout, rarely left the field, had as good a season as anyone in high school football, rushing for 2,060 yards, 35 touchdowns with 57 tackles, 6 interceptions. He's a guy. I just really love the way Pitt's recruiting on that side of the ball. Clemson, they signed the best defensive line class in the country last year, headlined by Brian Brzee and Malik Murphy, DeMonte Capehart, and the defensive tackle from Washington, D.C. Trey Williams. And so when you recruit at that caliber, the next year, you need to get guys that can push those guys that are coming in behind them. And Zaire Patterson, a 6'6", 230-pound defensive end out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who we just elevated into the top 100 of the top 247. He can do that. 17 sacks as a sophomore, 11 sacks and 4 interceptions as a junior. And those were his first 2 years playing organized football. So he's a guy that could be real special for Clemson. And then Michigan goes out and lands 2 of the best linebackers in the country. Junior Colson, 30 tackles for loss, 15 sacks as a junior in Tennessee, and then Jaden Hood out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to bolster their class, which now sits number 6 nationally in the 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings. So those were a few things that caught my eye over the weekend. Also, Georgia Tech, Shaden Peary, a quarterback from California, one of the top arms out west, a year after Jeff Collins and his staff go into the state of Florida and land 2 of the Sunshine State's best. We all know they were in that wishbone wing T triple option offense. They're now trying to go to an up-tempo, pro-style spread attack, and quarterback is key. And I think Georgia Tech's landed 3 good ones now in the Jeff Collins era.
It's not going to stop, folks. You got to keep it locked on 24/7 Sports for all the latest. Steve Wiltfong, a pleasure as always, sir. We'll do it again next week.
Take care, y'all.